because a lot has happened this week, especially with the naming of the second batch of nominees to the cabinet. We'll be looking at that and a lot more with this panel later on.
Oh yes, and because it's a Feel Good Friday, Brilliance Movement 254 will be on the ones and twos up hivi, some shaking the legs kidogo, tuone how things are going to be kwa dancing kidogo, and our guest artist Kaysan will be joining us for that. The ones and twos also kwa music policy. DJ Granite, you definitely want.
It's a heavy one, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Hautaki kumix hiyo.
Quick look at the headline, Mars casualties in wake of Raila deal. They talk about the political casualties, not kuna mtu ameumia. Yes, the political casualties. Plus, a very proper coverage of the Olympics on this paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages dedicated to the Olympics on the Standard today.
Raila move fuels Azimio breakup is on the big headline on Daily Nation.
The beginning of the end for Azimio as we know it.
Oh yes, tunaweza tusaidia director na hizo zingine on People Daily. Azimio dead is what they go with. Ndio hiyo. On the Star, we say why Ruto Raila deal puts Riggy in a tight spot.
It's a very long headline for a Friday. Surely they would have crafted a better one. Even just saying Riggy in a tight spot is enough. Right.
In the Star, gazeti la Taifa Leo. Sama
Raila aruka mawaziri. There's a lot of confusion. Exactly what is happening. Is ODM in government, or what exactly is happening? Raila sent out another statement yesterday. That's on the front page of Taifa Leo.
On Business Daily.
Traders on edge as KRA goes for old unpaid taxes. Wanakujiwa. And then a very interesting photo there of Boniface Mwangi amebebwa juju. Pelekwa to Coolies Hills.
Wow.
All right, we cross the border.
Uganda.
Daily Monitor.
Yes.
It's a very interesting headline on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Yes, General Museveni nails protesters to New Cross. Now listen to this. Let me read it for you. It says, as more dissenting youth are arrested, President claims unnamed foreign funders, very similar, we've had that before, are behind the protests. Then he says he's willing to join the march against corruption in his government if it is organized patriotically and held on a quiet Sunday. Rules. He'll join them, but it has to be on a quiet Sunday.
Yeah. And
then he talks about foreign funders. That script of foreign funders is very common. Yeah.
Ikitu maneno ya funders nini. Hey.
All right. On the New Vision, PDM cash, more parish chiefs arrested. Suspects demanded 50,000 shillings per beneficiary. Okay. Ugandan money, so it could be about 2,000-3,000 Kenyan bob.
Also make mention, Museveni speaks out on anti-graft demos as well.
And then a very interesting story here. Wife snatcher fined 10 million shillings.
The kind of headlines in Uganda.
In Uganda, very interesting, yes. Okay, in Tanzania, we have the Mwananchi.
Gazeti la Mwananchi, mapya aliyedaiwa kuua mkewe, kumchoma, madai mahakamani kuwa mkewe bado yupo hai. Jaji agiza kapimwe akili, mwenyewe mgomea akisema yuko timamu.
Right, and finally on The Citizen. And Citizen focuses on JKI. It's a big story. Why multinational interest in Africa's gateways is rising. You talk about India's Adani Group. This is one of the stories we've been talking about this whole week. That deal about the control and use of JKIA. India's Adani Group is seeking to make a substantial investment at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi in the latest development that shows the increasing interest of multinationals in Africa's transport and logistics center. That's a big headline on the front page of The Citizen in Tanzania.
Something else that we may miss, it is going to be happening today. Samia leads nation in marking Heroes Day.
Right.
Yes, so do expect some pictures coming out of Tanzania as they mark the Heroes Day. In ile siku yenye a very own and I wish to angepigia pilot amwambie, you know what, there's something happening in Tanzania.
For now, let's stay at home for now. Let's come back and take a look at the traffic situation in Nairobi. It is a Friday. Friday traffic hainanga pressure. Hata ukiangalia Thika Road, no pressure. Even Pangani, nothing. So far, Nothing happening at the Pangani interchange, meaning it's Nyue all the way into town. Even looking at Jogoo Road, which is another usual problem, there's nothing. It's clean. At Makadara there, and at the City Stadium roundabout, I am made to understand there's a bit of a go-slow.
Yes, for the public transport sector. I'll be telling you about that kwa diary.
Could they have started this early? Maybe. So probably guys want to go to town but hawana namna.
Yes.
But I've seen some matatus on Kiambu Road operating. Probably they'll start later.
Yeah.
But yes, probably that's another issue. And if at all matatu stay away from the roads, it means that motorists and other road users may enjoy traffic-free roads today. Further south on Mombasa Road, also looking the same. So probably, if at all they stay true to that, meaning hata hakuna haja kuangalia map tena sababu hakuna traffic. Yes.
Aya, wacha tuangalie kitu ingine muhimu sana unafaa ujue this morning before you just leave the house. Wacha tuanze na Makueni County. Overally, how Makueni County itakuwa inakaa when it comes to weather update ya leo as well as ya Saturday na Sunday. Tutakuwa hapa na wewe ni tukusaidie ujue venye utapanga weekend yako vizuri. If you're in Makueni, all is well. Warm temperatures getting into the day as high as 28 degrees. Right now it's 17, si mbaya sana, lows of 16. Similarly, into Saturday and Sunday, highs of 29, lows of kitu 15, 16 hapo. From Makueni, wacha nikupeleke all the way to Kajiado, where it is slightly lower than Makueni, 14 degrees Celsius. They say it feels like 14, but it's 15. But it's going to be warmer into the day. The weekend, highs of 25, as well as 26 Saturday and Sunday, and lows of 12 and 13. That's relative weather. Tuangalia hapa Nairobi, tuone pambana na hali. 16 degrees Celsius, hii imejaribu by the way. Kuna siku nilikuwa naangalia it was 12.
Today is a bit warmer.
11, yeah.
A lot warmer today.
This tells you this is how you start your weekend.
Oh yes.
Vizuri in a warm kind of a temperature.
It also promises to be a fairly warm weekend. 23, 24, not so bad.
Kumbuka last weekend nikiwaambia kutaanza kunyesha nini, kutaanza kuwa manyunyu. Hii weekendi if unapanga harusi uko sawa sawa.
All right.
Into the news story right about now, as you had mentioned, hiyo maneno ya magari. So basically what is going to be happening today, the transport sector of Kenya, which includes associations of long-distance drivers, offline and digital taxi operators, and matatu operators, have planned a peaceful demonstration to protest the increase of the levy from 18 cash shillings to about 25 cash shillings. That is just a nutshell of what they are agitating about. There's quite a number of that. They'll be having countrywide protests here in Nairobi peke yake, not just major cities, but then they're planning a whole major countrywide kind of a go-slow. So leo ungoje matatu shangae ziko wapi. That might be one of the reasons. Something also to look out for today at around 8:30 p.m. Paralympics kick off today. The opening ceremony will be at around 8:30 p.m. East African time. So according to the organizers, something that is out of the norm. So the ceremony will be held on the Seine River, Paris, which flows through Paris, where about 10,500 athletes will parade on more than 90 boats on the Seine River for 6 kilometers. So particularly even for Kenyans, will be out looking Kenyan flag iko wapi, Africa's fastest man, Ferdinand Omanyala.
Saying they'll be doing it on boats.
Yes. So it will start on boats, but haitaishia hapo. They'll now get in, because normally what they do is they just march into the stadium. Right now they're going to start kwa hiyo Seine River. You might have seen it on a number of photos. It's quite famous. Eiffel Tower iko mahali hapo karibu. So they'll start there and then they snake their way now to the stadium. Okay. Some beautiful photos you do expect at around 8:30 p.m. East African time. So the Kenyan flag will be hosted by Africa's fastest man, Ferdinand Omanyala, and Malkia Strikers captain Triza Atuka will be leading Team Kenya on that. You definitely don't want to miss. Right here, tutakuwa tunakuonyesha hizo maneno zote, hiyo bante yote at around usiku, just analyzing how things are going to be looking like. That and a lot more in our news bulletins as well as our digital platforms. Right now though, Today in History.
Today in History. On the 26th of July 2023, Niger soldiers from the Presidential Guard detained President Mohamed Bazoum and announced the suspension of institutions and the closure of all borders.
All right, tuangazie magazeti sasa. Right, on the front page of the Standard, mass casualties in wake of Raila deal. They call it the earthquake. The ramifications of cabinet pact cut deep. In the opposition, Kenya leader Martha Karua said she's quitting Azimio coalition. In government, Deputy President Riggy Gachagua is leaving his worst nightmare. This story is on pages 4 and 5 of the Standard this morning. It is the biggest discussion, and we'll be looking at this later on with my panelists. Another very interesting and rather sad photo there on the front page, a mother's cry. A woman who claimed her son was killed in the recent protests is arrested by police while demonstrating in Nairobi City yesterday. She was arrested with other protesters on Koinange Street, and you can see she's still showing the photo of her son from the back of that police vehicle. Very sad pictures there.
Yeah.
The other big story given prominence on this paper, and I mentioned earlier, is matters to do with the Olympics, which kick off today in Paris, France. Kenya are to maintain Olympics dominance, whereas the Shujaa made a false start. The Kenyan camp is upbeat. It will bag medals as the opening ceremony gets underway today. Yes, what Stanley was talking about earlier. And tender, the good, bad, ugly of JKIA Indian farm deals. This is a main story on the front page of the Citizen in Tanzania.
Yes.
It also makes it to the front page of the Standard here back home. Ni Friday, so pulse iko pale, watu wanaopenda
Nishai pull out.
miondoko. New faces of police service also there, and Safaricom to pay 48 billion shillings in dividends. Kwa hivyo kama uko na shares pale, iko mambo mzuri.
Oh yes.
Page 3 of this paper has a Paris Olympics. Kenyan queens look to continue. And even on the back page, more coverage of Olympics. And I'm telling you, this is from page, the entire sports segment of the Standard today is dedicated to all the athletes. So if you're wondering who will be in Paris representing Kenya, all the faces are there from page 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. Even on the back page, completely page 32, we have Ferdinand Omanyala, who will be flying the Kenyan flag high today during the opening ceremony. That's the Standard this morning.
Oh yes. Wacha pulse leo tuweke on hold kidogo. Our weekend kiwa kiingia, tuambie what's on the pulse and what to expect over the weekend. On to Daily Nation, the big headline, how things have been boiling nicely. Matters political temperatures ikipanda, Raila move fuels Azimio breakup, and they're asking there, beginning of the end, the concubinage, some very conk words for Friday, of opposition leader Raila Odinga's ODM with President William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza alliance has sparked an implosion. The Azimio la Umoja coalition after NARC Kenya, the party of Odinga's running mate in the 2022 elections, signaled its exit from the outfit. More coverage is on pages 4 and 5. And they say opposition leaders unhappy with former Prime Minister's decision to work with the government. Other headlines that you won't see on other dailies, pale kando on the left scroll, I watched Mackenzie starve my wife and daughter to death, is on page 2. Remember, pale Shanzu, they are continuing the hearings of this case. So this is just what kind of confessions coming out of there. On the back page, we'll get to that in a few, where they say court halts rollout of digital ID cards. Interesting turn of events. Kwingineko, probe on after doctor plunges to his death. On the bottom, something that will be discussed on State of the Nation today, political genius, how Ruto shifted his baggage to rivals. Pale juu, here comes your next police boss, Kanjo named to top post. That's also on the back page. And lights, camera, action. But Rio Olympics show gets underway. They also have quite the coverage on this, pages 32 all the way to 35. Kingia pale on the back page, something that you need to know this morning. So the case on the constitutionality of the database is pending hearing before the High Court. Basically talk about the court puts the brakes on planned rollout of digital identity cards. Petitioners say move will worsen exclusion of marginalized citizens. You can read that as well. You need Daily Nation for you.
Let's take a look at People Daily now. And I love this headline, very short. 2 words. Azimio dead. Final. Kwisha. Kaput. Kufinish kumalo. Fallout. Karua bolts out of coalition. Kalonzo refuses to join the government and projects image of new opposition leader, even as Raila maintains he has no pact with Ruto. So, mambo ya Raila, a lot of confusion. On one daily, they say he has endorsed. On this one, they say he insists he has no pact with Ruto. That story is on page 4. Another story there, a moth in trouble over abortion claims. And Ruto cabinet hits first roadblock. That story is inside the People Daily. Why President nominated Kanja, head of state, appoints 2 commanders of Kenya Police and administration counterparts. That's the People Daily this morning.
The Star goes with a different angle.
A very long headline on the Star.
As much as People Daily is saying Azimio dead, the Star says why Ruto-Raila deal puts Riggy in a tight spot. So they're focusing on the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. Cut to size, he'd vote to quote-unquote lay traps at State House to block Odinga. There's one of the cartoons that clearly imeweka picha hiyo laying traps vizuri. We'll get to that in a few. So the president has seemingly freed himself from Mount Kenya's political bondage. Ameweka picha yeye akiwa na bosi yake pale. Other headlines, pale kando on the right left scroll, Raila endorses cabinet deal. Ndio hiyo sasa.
Yeah, now this is a mix-up. Because, okay.
As mix-up deepens, they actually acknowledge the fact that there is a mix-up.
Which is which?
On that. Hope at last, lawmakers okay 3.5 billion cash shillings budget for cops pay rise. And on the siasa pullout, what next after Gen Z? Kenya faces a crisis among its youth population. Lakini mbona wauliza what next after Gen Z? Gen Z hatuendi mahali.
Bado muko.
Bado tuko. Bado tuko.
Story ilienda.
The
train left the station.
Even in a relationship, kuna koga na ile, the highs and the lows.
The highs and lows.
That's the beauty of a relationship.
Okay.
Si kila siku mko highs hapana. There's a beauty in mystery.
You're now waxing lyrical. Hiyo story ni za ajabu. Angazia gazeti la Taifa Leo. Raila aruka mawaziri. So, which is which? Has he endorsed? Has he not? Wanasema baada ya kujipata njia panda na ili kutuliza Gen Z, Odinga asema ODM haina mkataba na UDA. Kiongozi wa upinzani Raila Odinga jana alikanusha kuwa ana mkataba wa kisiasa na UDA inayoongozwa na Rais William Ruto, licha maafisa 4 wakuu wa chama cha ODM kuteuliwa mawaziri mnamo Jumatano. Habari kamili pale.
And probably today we might see in the political scene section of the Azimio leaders. Maybe Raila might be there, but then we might be seeing them addressing the nation and just trying to clear the air on this. So
that air needs to be cleared.
Yes.
More clarification here, vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo wanasema mbio kujaza nafasi za vinara ODM. Viongozi wamezea nyadhifa ODM na bungeni kumfuatia uteuzi wa mawaziri wapya juzi. Habari zaidi, Kiunjuri sasa mshtumu Gachagua, mbunge ashutumu naibu wa rais kufanya Rais Ruto kukumbatia kinara wa ODM. Iko off, but anyway. Wengineko mlipuko wa jeruhi watu 5, huku ni pale Mandera, kuna hoteli ambayo kulikuwa na mlipuko pale. Nilijiondoa kuokoa demokrasia, huyo ni Joe Biden, rais wa Amerika, anasema hivyo, na habari hiyo kwenye ukurasa wa 8 kwenye gazeti hili.
Maneno ambayo ni vigumu sana uone hapa nchini Kenya.
Kujiondoa. Na mwisho, Hakimi akerwa na mashabiki. Nyota wa soka asikitishwa na mashabiki kuvuruga mechi. Kwenye spoti hapo.
Right.
Kuna gazeti moja tu tumebakisha, Matters Business.
Yes, traders on edge as KRA goes for old unpaid taxes. As arrears date back over 10 years ago, businesses that skipped amnesty are in trouble. In a nutshell, I say the Kenya Revenue Authority has written to scores of business notifying them of overdue value-added tax, that is a VAT, balances that were accrued before the introduction of the iTax system in 2014, potentially hitting those unable to provide proof of payments, with bills running into millions of shillings. If kwa hiyo maneno, be keen on that this morning. On the ticker, other interesting highlights you need to know this morning. BAT sells factory parts on nicotine pouch license flop. So the BAT Kenya is selling the machinery installed at its oral nicotine pouches factory in Nairobi, which has been dormant for nearly 5 years as the government withholds a license for commercialization of the new product. And the Cabinet Secretary of Mining nominee finds himself on the ticker that says Joho Family Company now sues KPA over Mombasa port shed. Company associated with the family of former Mombasa governor and nominee of mining CS position, Hassan Joho, has sued the Kenya Ports Authority and claims that the state agency has denied it benefits of a parcel of land on which it planned to build a warehouse at the Mombasa port.
All right.
Yes.
Time for us to take a look at the cartoons as we also usher into the set our weekend queue, Bansi Kimuyu. So the cartoon on the standard, iko na punda. 2 frames there. One, the cabinet and makeover, and it says using KK paints, they've simply painted stripes on a donkey to make it a zebra. Yes. So yes. Yo, hakuna hajabadilisha kitu, ni rangi tu wamepaka. Hapo kuna picha ya rais. The cartoon on the Daily Nation goes with matters Olympics, but this time it's political Olympics. Kuna jamaa, and the watermelon is back. I don't know if that's the rightful owner. He's going for the javelin. Meanwhile, kuna mwingine ana lay traps. He's laying traps down there.
Yeah.
Na amevaa ile crown ya Murima. Lakini hiyo trap ni kama haijapata jamaa.
Kuna wengine pale wana watch tu, ameweka sufuria kwa kichwa. And your coach, by the way.
A lot of confusion in Kenyan politics. I think this just goes to show what kind of confusion we have. Na jamaa ambeba cabinet zote peke yake. Right. Let's take a look at other cartoons on the Star.
On the Star, a gentleman there, sijui kama anawaruka, ameshikilia a basket of oranges ndani. Ameacha mabishte wake pale na orange as well as a wheelbarrow.
Okay.
Kuna wengine hapo nyuma yake pia. There's a whole cabinet goes to speak on what the new kind of faces that you're seeing, even from ODM getting into the cabinet. You know, the Star. On People Daily, the same theme of this orange and cabinet.
I love this cartoon.
Inanikumbusha ile Sisol nilikuwa nacheza when I was young.
The confusion that we're talking about, are they there, are they not? Is ODM in government or not? So no, maybe, yes. Ruto's cabinet, where is the orange falling? We're still yet to get that clarification. Hopefully we'll get it.
But a clarification that we have right now is that our weekend queue is here.
Weekend imefika. Tunakwenda kujirusha.
The weekend queue is here, and I love the conversation that I've found you guys talking about, because yes, no, maybe. And I think we have always said that Kalonzo is the watermelon, but it looks like
they should exchange the fruits.
It looks like it, because hey, the uncertainty. Mara, we are not in it. Mara, we have our people there.
But you see now, this political discussion, what it has done is that this week, no one is talking about the Gen Zs. Yes? You people have been hogging headlines for the past 1 month or so. But with that cabinet change, everyone has moved to the oranges, and Raila is back on the front pages. And you wonder, okay, what happened to you guys?
We shall be back. And in the spirit of Gen Z. When I look at the Pulse, pengine, Gen Z protest in style.
Oh, that's the only place you can find
Do you have anything against Gen Z?
The usual faces are back on the front pages. Raila is back, Gachagua, and we can see even Matakaru and Kalonzo. We've forgotten about
we're giving them time. We shall be back.
We shall
be back for sure. But it looks like Gen Z has been protesting in style. The fashion sense on the street has been looking kind of crazy, according to the Pulse, of course. I can see a lady there in sweatpants, cap, ako na rungu, mwingine ako na mask. And these are just not the normal masks, like the stylish masks.
Let me ask you, do you think that there's a new fashion trend for protests? Like there are things that now you wear, now we'll start bringing unaenda Turkey, unaenda China, unaleta merchandise ya protest.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, guys on TikTok literally just do this. They tell you tomorrow is Mandamano.
Get ready
this
with me.
From head to toe.
Yeah.
This is what
they
we
tell you, exactly.
Yeah.
Face masks, nini, everything. Kama ni, if it's like a light bag, the kind of even bag you have, whatever, kama ni maji unaweka hapo ndani, everything head to toe.
I saw someone talking about a small water bag that you put in your backpack and then you just have a pipe.
Yeah. Just in case unaitoa,
you can wash your face, you can drink the water. Okay.
And I think still speaking about Gen Z, it looks like we're going to have a new leader as Peter Selassie has fronted himself to be the leader of Gen Z in Parliament.
Okay.
Yeah, he posted on his Instagram page. Stanley, what do you think about that?
Selassie.
Yeah.
Is he Gen Z really?
I don't think you have to be Gen Z to lead Gen Z.
Yes. They are very youthful, including the MPs we'll be having in studio for State of the Nation are quite youthful today.
Yeah.
To always if they are willing to offer leadership to Gen Z, because hii story ya kukaa leaderless, even ODM can claim to be leaderless. All their leaders have gone to government.
Yeah. Lakini hawatasema they're partyless.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Some interesting things coming up, but kwanzia 8, some whole entertainment, tutakuwa hapo even some dancers, and a guest artist, Kaisen, will be here.
And it's definitely Friday, so quite a lot has been happening in our entertainment scene. I mean, Mulamwa recently revealed that her baby mama, Carol Soni, has changed her daughter's last name to her name and completely removed the Mulamwa name. And he also revealed that he was actually courting another woman when Sony was still pregnant with his child. Interesting. We'll be having that conversation with Stanley and get to give you more details about all that.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. You can definitely interact with us later on. Up with some music. The ones and twos, 3s and 4s, Walls of Steel, DJ Granite. Anza kuturushia some requests that tunataka DJ anza kuchezea as of now. Anza kufikiria sahi kama ni Dedix. Useme naiba ready. Let me dedicate this song to Nani. Yes. Oh,
Mapenzi na weather.
Oh yes.
All right, time for State of the Nation after the break. Njeri Maina, MP Kirinyaga, Basil Robert, MP Yata, and Titus Lote, MP Kachiliba will be in studio for our conversation. Do stand by for that. And of course, you can be part of the conversation, as always, through our social media channels on X at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You can also tag me at Freddie W.
At one.
On Kids on the Block. The swans came ashore as darkness fell, and one by one turned into beautiful girls.
Do you remember the name of the girl in the story?
Yes, Tabu. And that girl, was he referring to you?
The birds have also been used as a tribal totem, and the medicine man may use them to fly to the spirit world.
Saturday at 9 a.m.
Discover the light within on An-Nur, where spiritual.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided
to cross the bridge, buy his house, and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m. The Grind, where business meets brilliance. It's not just about the ideas.
I was working as a shampoo boy. I used to wash clients' hair on the sink.
It's about making them happen. From big wins.
In primary school, when we would be asked what people want to be, I was categorical that I want to be a nurse.
To hard lessons.
The consoles change, the gaming equipment keep changing.
We cover it all. Tune in to The Grind.
You're watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Indimuli. It is a feel-good Friday, but State of the Nation right now, looking at the headlines, and I'm privileged to have in studio with me Titus Lote and Pika Cheliba. Good morning, karibu sana.
Good morning.
We're expecting two more members of the National Assembly to be joining us, but we can start with Bwana Lote. You're fresh back to Parliament this week, and it's exactly a month after demonstrators breached the perimeter wall of Parliament buildings, and you were forced to run for your dear life. How does it feel being back in Bunge?
Well, I think, good morning, Kenyans. It's important that we are discussing this today after Parliament resumed. It's good to be back in Parliament. Mm-hmm. I think the distractions that we saw in Parliament were huge distractions, all the way from the fence to the lobby area, all the way to the chambers. The distractions, I didn't expect it to have been completed, repairs to have been completed within a month. Mm-hmm. But surprisingly, if you go to Parliament now, you might not realize that there were distractions that were done on the 25th of last month. So basically, it feels good to be back in Parliament, but it also felt sad to note that we were able to destroy government facilities. And sincerely, out of that, we've spent money that we would have actually otherwise spent to do something else to try and do the repairs. I also think the members of Parliament are upbeat, and people have actually confessed, and people have done self-reflection in terms of how we were able to be driven to levels where our lives nearly got lost because of the demonstrations. Mm-hmm. More importantly, I think members of Parliament will be voting on matters more keenly than they did before, because if you realize that one of the things that probably agitated the Gen Zs then was the finance bill, which was overwhelmingly voted in by the members of Parliament. After that, the President, after listening to the Kenyans, threw it back to Parliament. Mm-hmm. Actually, we say that members of Parliament were thrown under the bus. A lot of members of Parliament then went out to ask for forgiveness. You actually saw members of Parliament, some of them putting on T-shirts, some of them went to public barazas, some of them went to churches, and they asked for forgiveness on this. I think there's been a month of reflection by members of Parliament.
Do you feel that change in the mode of operation going forward? Do you feel a sense of change across the House?
Definitely there's going to be a lot of sense of change. One, because of the political changes that we've already seen. We have been discussing the incoming onboarding of members of the ODM into government. Even the cordial relationship that we now have with the members of parliament from the opposition and the government has also given a new dynamic. And basically what we're going to see in parliament now is a different mode of operation than before, when there were antagonistic kind of relationship between the members of the Azimio coalition and the members of the Kenya Kwanza coalition. I think now we're going to see a different phase, a different operations, a different view of parliament and the way parliament is operating from now henceforth. So I do not expect parliament to operate like it used to operate before the break.
Do you agree that before this happened on the 25th of June, that probably members of the National Assembly specifically were, let me say, deaf to whatever the cries of the nation? As you say, despite public participation, members of parliament overwhelmingly voted for the finance bill. Yet the president said he listened to the people and rejected it, meaning that members of the National Assembly were basically not listening to the people.
Well, I don't think that is true. The members of the National Assembly listen to the people. And if you actually become critical in terms of how the members of the National Assembly voted for the Finance Bill 2024, you realize that most of them had rejected voting for the Finance Bill 2024 when inclusion of taxes was cutting on bread, was cutting on the mobile phone transfers charges, was cutting on fertilizer subsidies, was cutting on common goods such as the border or the motorcycles taxes. When those ones were removed, members of parliament then thought, well, it was time for them to vote for the finance bill, because all those things that people were actually gone onto the streets were actually removed. And you remember that's the time when the president called the coalition, the Kenya Kwanza coalition, and actually read a statement and said, all the things that the public were complaining about, we are going to remove them from the list of taxes. But still at that level when the president was removing that, the public was already too agitated and they actually just did not want anything to deal with that finance bill. Whether it was positive or not, they just wanted a complete rejection of the finance bill. I think when it went to the president, by the time this thing was going to the president, the tension in this country was too high to the levels where the president just knew it was not longer about the finance bill, it was about saving this country. And so he had to throw it back to parliament and said, fine, let this finance bill be rejected, let it come to parliament. For me, I think the president did not reject the finance bill because it was overwhelmingly rejected by the members of because the members of parliament did not listen, but he rejected because he realized that the country was breaking at that level.
Yet now parliament, and especially the National Assembly, has the Herculean task of regaining or rebuilding public confidence. The fact that people breached the perimeter wall of parliament and even made their way there, and they said the hashtag back then was Occupy Parliament, in itself was an indictment on the houses of parliament. Do you think that from your few sessions you've had this week that there's a general feeling that you need as collectively as members of the National Assembly to rebuild that confidence in public?
I think we need to rebuild the confidence in public across all sectors in this country. Because the Occupy thing was not only about occupying parliament. The last one, the one that was supposed to take place last week, was Occupy JKIA, Occupy State House.
But Parliament was the first?
Occupy, yes, Parliament was the first. Parliament was the first. Of course, Parliament is the first target anywhere. If you look at what was happening in Uganda on the 23rd of this month, they also wanted to occupy Parliament. So Parliament becomes the first prime target. That Occupy in this country also went to occupy the media. You remember even when you were demonstrating recently, you actually said it was also sad for the members of the media to be targeted by the very same agencies who actually then shared your numbers online and you are also trolled online. So Occupy was Occupy everywhere. So the confidence in this country is that it's not only Parliament that is supposed to rebuild confidence. All the institutions in this country are supposed to rebuild its confidence to the members of the public. Yeah, so
Yet, as elected leaders, to represent the people, do you acknowledge the role that especially the National Assembly played in getting us to the crisis we're now seeking to get out of?
Well, I think all of us played a role. I did not want us to start saying that we blame the National Assembly squarely for this. We blame everybody, including the perpetrators that came in and took advantage of the protest, the peaceful protest of the Gen Zs, because that is what actually brought everything down. So it's not just the National Assembly. The National Assembly, like I said, had rejected the initial finance bill, the one that had taxes on things that are very common things. But I think when it was realized that those things were actually affecting the people based on the counter proposal that was given back to the people, to government by the people during public participation, those very punitive things were removed.
Okay.
But then at that time I said, already the public had been already worked itself to levels where you cannot control. So it was already beyond repair.
Okay.
Yeah. So if it was the normal times, I don't think that finance bill was going to be rejected. In any case, if you compare the finance bill 2023 and finance bill 2024, you might realize that finance bill 2023 was a little bit punitive, but it went through because the public had not been agitated to the levels that we saw in the finance bill 2024.
And I'd like to welcome onto the set Robert Basil, MP Ata constituency, and Njeri Maina, MP Kirinyaga. Karibuni sana. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
We were just discussing with your colleague here, Wanalote from Kacheliba, the fact that you've just returned to the National Assembly after a month-long recess, and you went on recess immediately after the events of the 25th of June, when protesters breached the perimeter wall of Parliament, and some of you had to scamper for safety. And the first question I asked him is, you're back in Bunge now, do you feel safer? Has the feeling changed, Bwana Basil?
First, thank you. I think it's a long time since I was last year. I mean, since I lastly came to the show. I think we will not say we are feeling more safe because you see, if you have a wound and you bandage it without putting medication, that wound cannot heal. So I think the situation is not fully solved. And what agitated Gen Zs to come to Parliament is still there. And that is why I don't think even him is safe. All of us, we are hoping we'll be safe.
Okay.
But as it is, I think it's a waking call for members of Parliament to diligently do their job. Otherwise, the situation may be worse if we don't wake up and represent our people as we are ought to do. Yes.
And it's definitely an indictment on even individual members of Parliament. Some of them were, the protesters said their conduct was not what they had expected. And many have even called for a change in the leadership of Parliament, especially the National Assembly. Do you think that going forward, something visible needs to happen? Probably a change in the leadership in Parliament, the leaders of majority or minority, basically parliamentary leadership. Do you think that would, in a sense, pacify the masses, especially those who feel that the National Assembly has not been doing its work?
I think that narrows down to individual members of Parliament and their role as representatives of the people. I don't think really that changing the leadership would change maybe how a member of Parliament maybe engages or exercises their representative duty. So for me, I think that is a smoke screen, and it really wouldn't deal with the issues at hand. And I believe the young people spoke resoundingly and told us that the system is no longer working, that there's high rocketing and employment, and they're not able to adjust and make something out of the living or themselves. And what I can say is that members of Parliament exercise their mandate with or rather in consultation with the people, because I am not elected to represent my personal views. Article 1 of the Constitution says that sovereign power belongs and is vested in the people. So I think it was a wake-up call to members of parliament, and that is why I insist it is an individual perspective. People need to introspect. As a member of parliament for Kirinyaga County, I need to introspect how better I can represent and agitate for not only the young people of Kirinyaga County, but collectively the people of Kirinyaga County, and make sure that I exercise my mandate within what they want. And
basically that's what everyone wants to hear. All Kenyans want to hear that, but that's not what is happening in the National Assembly. And you've been accused, rightly so, of basically paying your allegiance mostly to your individual or respective political parties and failing to represent the people. In fact, one of your colleagues said that her allegiance is directly to the party that got her to parliament. That is a sentiment. That was a sentiment back then. Do you think that can change going forward, Bonabasil?
I think, as my sister, my fellow member of parliament said it rightly, all of us, we have a duty to represent our people. And that is the core reason why we were voted or elected to represent them. Of course, party issues tend to interfere with some of the members. You saw the way the voting pattern was done in the finance bill. Some people said yes, and if you ask the people, why did you say yes? They don't have a specific reason why they voted yes. You saw when the president failed to assent to the bill. What happened? All the members who voted yes, they were all clapping behind the president. Why? And they are the same people who said, we are okay with the bill. So it tells you, most of them, they are not independent. And that independence of parliament and members of parliament tend to be interfered with by the party which they represent. And it's so unfortunate because as members of parliament, we are elected to represent the interests and to resonate with the realities of the people who send us to the August House. And I think going forward, it has been very clear that the people's power come first. And that is within Article 1, that is sub-Article 2 of Article 1. And in reality, anyone who tends to vote against the wishes of their people will actually be thrown under the bus.
But is it possible, Bonalote, that you could go and vote against a bill sponsored by the UDA party that took you to parliament? Is it possible that that could happen going forward?
Well, it is actually. Even when we are doing the voting for the finance bill, we saw members of the UDA voting against it, some members of the UDA voting against it. And we also saw some members of the ODM party voting for it. So we cannot completely say that the members of parliament are completely directed by the parties that they represent. Sometimes it is also the conviction that you have as an individual. So we saw those, and so that basically tells you that it's not completely about the party, but largely also towards the party, because you are all elected and you came in through parties that have a vision that you need to stand for. So sometimes when parties, and you remember before we actually went in for the voting of the finance bill, both houses, both coalitions actually had a PG with their members and to rally them to vote against or to vote for. So listening to the leadership of a party or a coalition was also critical at this point. So there was the personal conviction and there was also the party position. There's also the perception that when you hold your PG meetings at State House, it means you're simply doing the bidding for the executive. Matters perception do count as well. Yeah, of course, matters perception do count. But whether the PG is done in State House or whether the PG is done inside or outside this country, a PG remains a PG. What comes out of the PG is what is more important than the point or the position or the state where the PG is held. But it's also important for us to consider the fact that even those that went to the State House that then, the likes of Omushomba and the others, were seated in State House, but they went into Parliament and in the chambers they voted against the bill because they will tell you that they are listening to what their people are saying, the people that they are representing. So I'll say it's a balancing act for each member to vote, first of all, consciously about what he thinks or she thinks she represents, and two, what the party believes and the party wants them to vote for. Because at the end of it all, let's be true to ourselves, the party matters also, the party position also matters. Because when you are elected, when you went out to campaign, you campaign on a particular platter and you actually promised a particular agenda to the people. And that agenda is supposed to be carried both at the executive and also at the legislature. Yeah.
Okay. Yet the protesters or the agitators say they are still not done with Parliament. The National Assembly, they say yes, that was just day one of Occupy Parliament. They're now moving even to institute measures to recall some of your colleagues. It means there's still dissatisfaction with the conduct of the National Assembly especially. We've not had this with the Senate, the National Assembly. Do you think that going forward this will actually happen? And do you think it should? Do you think that maybe not yourself, but the conduct of some of your colleagues is wanting enough for them to be recalled?
First, let me add on what my good friend and colleague and Kenya Kwanza member has said, that we all went for a PG in State House, and it doesn't matter really where the PG is held. It's neither here nor there. And
but
there was a party
do matter.
position. There was a party position, and I was one of the members of UDA party who voted no for the finance bill. So at the end of the day, it really narrows down to individual members of parliament and how you interact with your people and how you exercise your representation mandate. And I was representing the voices of the people of Kirinyaga County because I had undertaken extensive consultation in regard to how they perceived the finance bill. And the president does not vote for any finance bill. The president does not sit in the National Assembly. And of course, it's such a tricky balancing act when there's a party position and when your people have expressly told you this is a way. And for me, I think it was an individual decision that if there's conflict of both, then the voice of the people, the voice of the people who sent me to Parliament remains supreme. And you know, Kenya, unfortunately, we vote along party lines. And for a long time, we vote along tribal lines. So we have parties that are popular in certain regions and popular in others. And you find that even if you're a good candidate and you're in the wrong party, then perhaps you don't make it to elective positions. So it is such a tough balancing act, like my brother has said. And it just breaks or narrows down to you as a person and how you really want to exercise your representative role or mandate.
Okay.
In regard to Parliament, any citizen that wants to recall their MP is within their mandate. It is their right, it is provided in the Constitution, and they have full protection and support from the Constitution of Kenya. But what I would say and what I would stress on is that we have less than 3 years to the general election. I would urge them, perhaps, it would be prudent to wait so that we don't disrupt even the delivery of services to Mwananchi. But if they really feel that they want to recall their member of parliament, it is within their right. It is also within their right to hold to account their members of parliament leading up to the 2027 election. So if they say they're not done with parliament, I mean, it is within their right to hold us to account. So it is okay for them to do that.
And on the issue of accountability, because that appears to be the biggest issue here, and if you look at the action of breaching parliament, probably it's an indication that many Kenyans feel frustrated that some of the instruments provided by the Constitution to hold members of parliament accountable are not really working. Bona Basil, do you feel that the instruments are working? And do you think that members of the public feel that they have access to these instruments to hold members accountable, away from waiting for 2027?
Be recalled.
Yes.
I think with what is happening people had already, they have been suffering in silence, and that's why the agencies came forward. When it comes to accountability, citizens have a duty, to make sure the members of parliament and the people they have elected are actually delivering for them. And I would not say that the instruments are not working, because in principle, as my sister said, recalling members of parliament is within the purview of the electorates. So they can recall you if you are not performing.
It has so far proven almost impossible to do it. No one has ever been recalled from the Houses of Parliament. If it will happen, it will be the very first time.
With the new bill which was ascended to, I think the IBC bill, there is clear provisions that any member of parliament who is not delivering or discharging duties as expected of them, they can be recalled by the electorates. So that window is coming up, is being opened. But as it has clearly, or as my sister has mentioned very clearly, if you look at the period left before we go to the next general election, it's about 3 years. So looking into that, the whole process of recalling, subjecting people to another by-election, it is a rigorous process. It's not something you'd wake up and do it tomorrow. It also requires budget, because money is needed, and all these will also affect the resources that could be used for development. But when it comes to accountability, we have a clear duty. Of course, oversight is one of the key functions of a member of parliament, because you're supposed to oversight the executive. And the citizens are supposed to oversight us. Because you see, when you do public participation, you get the views in terms of what people want done for them. And then in the process of delivery, they're able to say how resources are utilized. And that is the key drive which made Gen Zs in the first place to come and start protest. Remember, they were all agitating to an end of opulence within government, wasteful spending within government, corruption within government, tribalism within government, and in principle, poor governance, if you summarize all that. That is why they all went to the streets. So it is a clear indication that as part of their oversight, they were doing their role as oversight in all organs of government. And as members of parliament, of course, our key role, I said, is oversight. So it is a multi-sectoral kind of approach where different people are part of oversight and trying to ensure all elected persons, including state officers, deliver.
Okay.
But in Kenya, you see, when you see most of the state officers, I will give an example of cabinet secretaries. In the sense of the discharging duties for citizens, most of them they are there to serve the appointing authority. And that is one of the problems we have.
Okay.
You are a state officer, you are cabinet secretary, but instead of understanding you are there to serve Kenyans, most of them, they are there to serve the appointing authority. And that is where you see the disparity in delivery of services. Some areas have oversupply of services, others have nothing. Others are labeled as opposition areas, so they are denied deliberately services, simply because they are labeled as opposition areas, which is very wrong approach to governance. If you look at an advanced economy like the United States, we have two major parties, Democrats and Republican, regardless of who is holding or is steering the development of the governance. If it's Democrats, doesn't mean areas of Republican don't get services. But when it comes to Kenya, it's the opposite. There are some areas which are purely perceived as opposition areas, which is so wrong. When you are elected, that other end of politics is supposed to serve so that all areas get service based on baseline data and based on what is required in those particular areas.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things that you'll be called upon to do in a very short while will be to vet the new cabinet that has just been reconstituted. If you look at the headlines today, there's a lot of confusion. And exactly, even the cartoons just talk about a lot of political confusion. There's still some dissatisfaction with some people who have been reappointed to the cabinet. At least 10 people from the cabinet that President William Ruto dismissed have been nominated to resume their roles, probably in different portfolios. Let's take a look at this story where the president is defending his choice of cabinet nominees.
A day after breaking his silence on the second batch of nominees, President William Ruto descended on County number 13, Tharaka Nithi, the hometown of Interior Docket nominee, a professor of law, Kithure Kindiki. The head of state embarked on matters national unity, this stemming from the broad-based government he said he would build, evidenced by the entry of Raila's men in cabinet.
Mimi vile vile nimefanya mambo jana. Nimesema tuunde serikali ya kuunganisha Wakenya wote ndio tutembee safari moja. Munasema tuungane ama tutengane? Tuungane ama tutengane?
President Ruto did not shy away from defending his new cabinet nominees.
Na katika hiyo serikali mimi nimeunda jana mpya. Huyu Profesa Kindiki ataendelea kuwa waziri wa usalama wa taifa letu la Kenya. Mtu akifanya kazi sina anaongezewa. Huyu Profesa Kindiki amesukumana na magaidi mpaka magaidi wametoroka. Amepigana ako area hapa. Amepigana na wale bandits walikuwa wanasumbua watu kule North Rift. Mpaka bandits wametoroka, tumefungua mashule.
President Ruto was flanked by a host of other elected leaders, including his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, Governor Muthomi Njuki, and others.
Mheshimiwa Rais, umefanya vile inastahili. Umefika pahali unapendwa, pahali unaungwa mkono. Katika kura iliyopita, Tharaka Nithi ndio county ilikuwa namba 1 kupigia wewe kura katika Mlima Kenya. Na kwa hivyo ukija hapa kwa mambo ya maendeleo, you are in the right place at the right time, serving the right people for the right reason.
In the caravan was Interior CS nominee Kithure Kindiki, who is making a comeback after months of turmoil.
Jambo ya pili na ya mwisho ni kukushukuru vile vile kwa sababu umeleta serikali ya umoja wa kitaifa, na sasa nchi yetu, mimi nikiwa waziri wako wa usalama wa taifa, kwa sababu ya ile umoja umeleta, sasa tuna nafasi nzuri ya kupata maendeleo na nchi yetu itaendelea kusonga mbele.
The president later headed to Mombasa County, the home ground of former Governor Ali Hassan Joho, who has also been appointed to the cabinet. George Maringa, TV47, Nairobi.
Yes, the president sounds very confident that his choice this time round is it, but does Parliament agree? There are many Kenyans who say they did not expect anyone to be returned, to be nominated back to cabinet, and the president was loaded when he dismissed the entire cabinet. But to return about half
of the
people, that will definitely cause ripples. But now it is up to Parliament. It's no longer in the president's hands. And many people are asking, now that members of the National Assembly are saying that this time round, tutafanya kazi. The expectation is that you will simply rubber stamp the nominees like you did the very first time in 2022. Let me ask you, Njeri Maina, do you expect anything different this time round?
I was looking at Lotte, and I was certain that you were going to ask him first. Let me have a
Let him ponder on the question a bit longer.
Let him internalize it. Mm-hmm. What I think is that, one, I am not in the select committee for vetting the CSS, neither is actually any of my colleagues here. Mm-hmm. I didn't see their names. So I would not want to preempt what the select committee will come up with, or rather the report that they're going to table on the floor of Parliament. And collectively, we must remember as members of Parliament that we have a duty to represent the best interest of the people and this nation. And maybe if on reappointment of some of the persons who were in the previous cabinet, we must also give the president some room to wiggle and, as the appointing authority, nominate persons that he believes maybe perhaps were, or rather have been helping him in execution of his mandate to this country. So persons like, I saw the former, the then CS Interior, Kithure Kindiki, I've also seen Rebecca Meano and quite a number of them who's made a comeback. And let us also not want to laud upon him, because these cabinet secretaries, when the dissolution was done, it is not because there were questions on execution of their duties. It is because the young people demanded that they wanted a reset of the system. So perhaps maybe we would feel disappointed, and the view would have been maybe let us have an entirely new cabinet, but let us also cut the president some slack.
Okay. But Bwana Lote, the president himself had complained at some point that this cabinet failed him. That was an indictment on his own choices. It goes to say that probably even the National Assembly, in vetting that crop of members of cabinet back then in 2022, failed to do his job properly. And if I may quote, one of the nominees was a nominated member of parliament, commenting on the vetting process back in 2022, said, let's give the president his skunk. That is ODM chairman, John Badi. Meaning that they had realized that this were probably not the best people for the job, but yet they still had to stamp the same. Do you think that Parliament failed the president through the vetting process? And could that happen again?
Well, I think this country has gone through some bit of reset since the demonstrations by the Gen Zs. And members of Parliament are a little bit more conscious in terms of the decisions that they are making. And I will really not trust that the members of Parliament are going to behave the way they behaved probably during the first vetting or even during the Finance Bill 2024. I think the members of Parliament are a little bit keen in terms of what they're supposed to do, despite the fact that there is a party position. One thing that I really want to say is that, like what Betty has said, the president did not sack these people based on the incompetence. Let us be sincere to this, because I have not seen any of them that has been sacked because of incompetence. Of course, there is the liturgy and there is the complaints of the performance of some of them. And what the Gen Zs went to the streets, they actually say they want a complete reset of all of them. But that does not mean that they are no good members of the cabinet that were there. You can also hear from the Gen Zs themselves, even when they said, get all of them out, there were some voices that were saying, so-and-so was a little bit better, so-and-so could come back. So even within the Gen Zs themselves, they had preferences like, we have ensured that the president get all these people out, but we will have preferred that he retains so-and-so and so. So for me, I'll say, the executive, by the constitution, the president has been given the mandate to choose members of the cabinet. And so the fact that the president has decided to bring back these people is still within his mandate. He has not done anything that is extra his mandate. So we will allow him as the president to give us back the people that he believes can perform for this country. And I would say the Gen Zs gave the president a very good breathing opportunity, because even at the point when the president said some of his cabinet were incompetent, he probably was held captive by either the party, the promises that he's done to these people before, the communities that they represent.
Do you feel he has managed to free himself from that right now?
He has actually freed himself from this. And I say the Gen Zs gave him that the breathing space, which he has used now to be able to get off some of the people that he probably wanted to get off through the normal ways, which never worked. So the Gen Zs gave him the clean check to do it. So the fact that he's brought 10 out of the 20, the 24, the 22, yeah? 22. The fact that it's brought 10 out of the 22 basically tells you that he's gotten off half of the hook. So probably those are the people that he wanted to remove. Probably those are the people that he said are not able to understand their ministries. Probably those are the people that he believed were not able to perform. So let's give him the chance again. And I will not say let's give him the skunk like another member of parliament used that before. Let's give him back the people that he believes can work for this government. But let me tell you, the Gen Zs have done a very good work. And I will want to appreciate the Gen Zs, because if you look at the nominees, some of the information that we didn't know about these nominees are actually out. And the Gen Zs are saying, listen, Parliament, when you go to vet Minister X, Y, and Z, these are their profiles, these are their past sins. please look at them. And I don't think the members of parliament will ignore that. If agency was able to go back to probably 10 years ago, they were young, but probably because of history and what they have gotten, they have been able to say this minister 10 years ago who was found in an appropriate act, who was found culpable of this. Please consider that when you are doing your vetting. And again, it's not all about the members of parliament. It's also about the members of public. Already, there is a notice out for members of public to give their memorandums. So everybody in this country is going to participate in terms of accepting or not accepting these members of parliament, these members of cabinet. So I will also urge the members of public not just to throw everything to the members of parliament. They also have a time now to be able to give their memorandums and also tell us some of the scenes that people have created. If there's a scene that you know as an individual, members of the public, please let the members of parliament know, because we are not angels to know what this person did in your village. So let us know so that we can also be able to use that when we are vetting this.
We talked about perception a lot, and one of those members of the cabinet which was dismissed had been accused of showing opulence publicly.
And then reappointed.
Curiously, he's one of those who has been nominated back. Are you persuaded that the president got it right this time? And are you further persuaded that the National Assembly will do a better job at vetting?
First, let me make reference to the opening remarks that came from the president and which contributed dismissing the whole CS. He said, after holistic review of appraisals from my CS, I hereby dismiss the entire cabinet. That means he had looked at their performance appraisal and seen that all of them did not meet the minimum expectations as per what duties or functions was given to them. So when he went ahead and reappointed the same people and actually assigning some CS in the same position they were, it makes someone wonder what has changed, you know. Again, here we have seen some people who used to criticize the same government now coming to join the same government. So in reality, it is an irony and an insult to the same protesters who are agitating for end of opulence, end of tribalism, end of corruption, end of wasteful spending, etc. So now, when you tell members of parliament to do a thorough job and diligent job when it comes to vetting, my question is, how do you expect a member of parliament to fairly vet a fellow colleague? Then says no. So in principle, it will be more of rubber stamping, because majority of the people there, they are politicians. Who are going to vet them? Fellow politicians. Opio used to be our minority leader. Badi was in parliament as a nominated member of parliament. You know, Joe served as a politician. He's going to meet his colleagues who are supposed to vet him. How is it going to be fair? So if I was the head of state and to restore the confidence needed in this government, I would have actually assigned an independent hiring body like Okin Associates to do the filtering, where all Kenyans across the different sectors, including those who have gone to Boga Bongas, I mean Boda Bodas and Mama Mboga and others, to express their interest. And this independent body could come up with a clear TOR for each ministry. And then they tell all Kenyans who qualify to apply. After you apply, if you have millions or thousands of applicants, you are subjected to a written test. After that, you go to oral. So the written test is going to filter the thousands to a few sizable sample that can be subject to oral interviews. And then the president can be an observer. Once the selection is done, each ministry, the independent consultant could have selected, let's say, 3 for each ministry for the president to pick from. Because within the constitution, it is the president to pick CS. But because you have a huge sample size, that could be trimmed by the process of hiring, so that you are left with a few who seem to have met the minimum threshold, regardless of the tribes, regardless of whether you know them, and then you pick from that. That is what was expected of the president. But now picking and reappointing people he had already said is not satisfied of their performance, that is double speak.
Okay.
And that's why myself as a member of parliament, I don't see the select committee going to do a fair job, because in principle, you cannot vet a fellow colleague. Okay. It's like him, you tell me to vet Lotte and we always drinking tea and I know him more, he knows me, we discuss a lot.
Simply
or you tell me to vet Jerry Maina, and we meet all the time. You know, we are members of the young parliamentarians in parliament, so there is so much interactions. So that can't be fair. That is conflict of interest. So let's not just use a process to sanitize a process or to rubber stamp. That's not what is expected of Kenyans. And that is the problem, the greatest failure we have. Okay. I have to speak that because I'm a patriot and I want to see a progressive Kenya. I'll be happy to see Kenya on the path, the trajectory of progression. That is what I want to see my country.
I think Basil could be right, but I think also respect a document called the Constitution of this country. Until then we change the Constitution, for us to now bring in other vetters to vet the members of the cabinet. What the Constitution provides for now is that once the president appoints
nominates
the members of the cabinet, it goes directly to Parliament.
But does Parliament do its work?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm just first of all trying to address what he says. He probably is talking about a very good thing that is not in that Constitution. So probably what we will need to say as a country is, even for us to move forward, we might want to, because if you look at what the BBI was trying to address, if you look at what the agencies are trying to address, some of these things that we are actually operating on now is because of the provision of the Constitution. So we might have very good ideas, like he says, which is not workable now. It cannot work. It will be out of the Constitution and somebody can challenge it and be thrown away. So what I will actually say is that we will need to operate on this Constitution, but I think what needs to actually come into our minds, every Kenyan now, is that we have a constitutional problem. Our Constitution was written 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago, and we've already seen a lot of loopholes in our Constitution that has even brought us to this level. Even some of the things that agencies were suggesting were actually completely out of the Constitution. And I will say that as much as the Constitution has provided for what we have now, that is exactly what we're going to operate on. Members of Parliament, he has actually shown it, he's given a very good analogy of, I cannot vet him out, seriously, because I am with him. And when the Constitution was being drafted many years ago, people never saw that. Now that we've seen it.
So basically you're agreeing that the process in Parliament will not really give us quality.
I'm not really agreeing with it. And that my beginning statement was, parliamentarians are a little bit key now. And one of the things that I have said initially is that probably parliamentarians were not provided with a lot of information about individuals. And I've actually thanked the agencies, because I've actually gone online. If you want to know anything about me, you can go online now and agencies will bring it out. And the agencies has brought a lot of information out.
One Gen Z is actually saying hi to you here.
They have actually brought in a lot of information about the nominees now, which was probably not known in 2022. And I think now is the owners of the parliament, and especially the select committee, now to look at that information and be able to use that information to vet these people. But again, the challenge that Basil says still stands. Even if you know the sin of this person and you've been drinking tea with this person, the way you are going to judge this person is a little bit different from if you did not know this person. Again, I do not really agree much more about the hiring process that he talks about. In this country, we've actually seen people going through independent or qualified or this kind of what we call professional recruiters. But still, at the end of it all, you find that the qualified people do not get it. Qualified people don't get it. If you are coming from a marginalized community like where I come from, I go through all that, but still at the end of it all, the person that comes out through this thing we call professional recruiters still is somehow skewed, still questionable. So even when we will want to finally go to that process, the independence of any recruiting agency globally always has a skew, a bias towards a particular team. And the reason why most of the pastoralist people that I represent, most of the marginalized people, don't get jobs in this country.
You know, when my brother says that these independent hiring bodies, most of them fail, I would tell you, myself as someone who has served in the UN at a global level, I used to compete globally. No one knew me. I didn't know who were the hiring people, but out of millions, you emerge. So what I'm telling him, for example, we have seen people with the D- being reappointed or being selected for the CS. That tends to insult education and in principle, because you cannot expect to have chapati and you're using a unga flour. You'll never get your chapati. Garbage in, garbage out. And this issue of rewarding politicians will come to an end if we change the way we are hiring people to serve. Remember the CS we want, they are technocrats. People are there to serve Kenyans, not appointing authority. But if I know I've been appointed by Jerry, she'll be my master. And that is the problem we have been having from 1963. If there was an independent body to hire, the CS will deliver their job independently because they know it's not you, the president, who appointed me. I fought for it. How did I fight for it? I went through a selection process, that is a long listing. Then you went to a short list based on your qualification and experience. And you went to competitive, that is the written, the orals. All that give credibility to the process. And that makes the person who emerge to be selected for the job to perform. But if you know it is Ndimuli, who I was with in the University of Nairobi, who has appointed me, then I'll be serving mainly your interest, so that you don't get.
But that is where the Constitution has placed us.
And that is where we need to make amendments. I've been seeing so many amendments coming from the government, being pushed, and ensuring everyone votes in favor of that. So if we want a good country, let's fix the issues. Otherwise, it will be like what I said initially. You have a hood, you don't treat the hood, you bandage the hood. That hood will never heal. And that's the problem we have. We can't assume by bringing opposition in the government, we have solved the problem. We have just tried to cover or to assume. And that is what we call trying to throw a problem under the carpet. And eventually, it might erupt in a bad way. We never expected Gen Zs to come to parliament. But they even attacked the judiciary. What was left was State House.
Whatever the protesters wanted and what the president has given them, would we say the president has misread what the agitation was about? Because it would appear that he is fixing this through a political remedy, that you've just brought in members of ODM, the entire leadership of ODM away from the party leader into cabinet. Do you think that political solution will stand?
You know, I wanted to laugh when my good brother Basil said the government. You know, now they are also in government. Azimio is in government, quote unquote. Basically,
some parties within Azimio.
It is ODM, yes, the traitors who are in government.
So basically, there will be no politics of opposition or pinpointing fingers. I know some of our colleagues have thrived on politics of opposition and perhaps even gotten elected on the basis of being in opposition. But now I think everyone is going back to the drawing board and seeing how they can realign themselves and organize their political future. What I want to say is that the problems that the young people of this nation were speaking about, corruption, unemployment, a failed system, they will not be fixed by grand, broad-based government. And appointing people from particular communities, of course, does not solve the situation unless we are being delusional to ourselves. But what I can say is that politics is a game of chess. And any politician will tell you that the first rule of the game is, of course, survival in the game. And at the end of the day, I think we want to look at things from a very idealistic view and forget that politics also plays a role. So the president is self-preserving, and he has a right to do so as any politician. And at the end of the day, there was an opportunity, but we cannot overhaul the system overnight. These things are things that have been systemic for many years. And I have said before that the high level of unemployment, corruption, they're not a making of the Kenya Kwanza government. These are things that have been plaguing our nation since independence, 60 years post-independence. You don't want to believe, or rather tell me, that anyone would be delusional enough to think that we could just have a quick fix overnight with that. If we had, let's say, even a entirely fresh cabinet, right? Those things would still not have been resolved. Of course, it would have given the perception that you're saying, and we must not forget that it is not the perception that matters, it is the core reality. And at the end of the day, that is where we are at as a nation. And the young people, and I was speaking to some student leaders yesterday, and I told them there are only two ways to engage government. You're either in the system or you run the system. Mm-hmm. The young people must also be accountable for their voting decisions. We saw a huge voter apathy in 2022 elections. So it is also upon ourselves as young people to introspect and know that we must participate actively in government, because if we don't, then we will be onlookers where you're told checkmate. And there's absolutely nothing you can do, because at the end of the day, like I've said, politics is a game.
Okay. On this issue of self-preservation, it would appear it's not just the president that was seeking to extend his survival, that even political leaders from the other side felt threatened by the movement that was building and building fast. And them coming together is simply to ensure that status quo remains and survive going forward. But do you think that that remedy, what Basil calls patchwork, that it could actually be the beginning of the solution to the crisis we have?
Well, first of all, I want to appreciate the president for saving this country from collapse. We were actually at the brink of collapse on the 25th of June, when the members of the public accessed parliament, including the chamber. This country was actually collapsing. And actually the things that followed after that have actually been putting this country at the edge. Whether you saw it or you didn't see it, this country was collapsing. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a story, a small story about what I had about some people I found. I was in Dubai sometimes when the crisis was going on. And as I was walking in the supermarket, I saw 3 people following me, Arabs following me. I actually noted these people have interest in me. And so I went and stood somewhere, and they came. And they asked me if I came from Sudan, and I said, no, I don't come from Sudan. So we sat down, and they told me they were refugees from Sudan. Mm-hmm. The Sudan, not the South Sudan, the Sudan. Mm-hmm. They were refugees, and they were in Dubai, and they gave me the deplorable situation that they were living in. One of them was a chemical engineer, but now could not get a job. They were just crowded somewhere because they were refugees. And so we talked, and they asked me for me to support them with food and clothing and even shoes, because they didn't have anything to wear. So we talked, and when we talked, they told me, if you're from Kenya, because they realized then I come from Kenya, if you're from Kenya, we, the young people, got al-Bashir out of power. We were very happy, and we thought al-Bashir was going to get out of power, and everything was going to be fixed in the day. But now look at us, we are refugees. In fact, they told me that their parents are in Egypt and they cannot even meet because of travel restriction and their status as refugees. So they said, if Kenyans realize early enough that the direction they are going is where we were, they will need better stop. Otherwise, then you find yourself in the situation that we are in. At the point where this country was collapsing, and I want to appreciate the president, and I want to appreciate also this other Azimio, despite the fact that Basil says they have not crossed over, they have actually crossed over, because Azimio is basically ODM. Azimio is basically ODM. They have crossed over because they have realized that at this point, it is more of saving the country. It's more of preserving the country and not the president. Okay. The president has everything. He can fly out of this country and say, let me go and enjoy my family. This country will be in turmoil. The refugees is not going to be the president. the refugees is going to be the Kenyan on the street. Okay. So it is not self-preserving for the president, but self-preserving for this country. For the nation. And you already see immediately this government are starting to form the coalition. The tension has gone down. Tuesday, there was no demonstration. Yesterday, there was no demonstration. At Bell scale, it tells you that from now henceforth, there was a bit of course, it doesn't die immediately, but it is not the magnitude that we saw at the height of it. Everything is cooling down, and it has to cool down fast before we now realizes that we have a country to build. And then we start talking about changing our constitution. We start talking about engaging the youth more meaningfully. And I want to say the youth lost it big. The youth lost it big this time, because when the president invited them for discussion, they say they were faceless, they were leaderless. Otherwise, if they did provide leadership, probably this cabinet will have actually seen one of the faces of the Gen Zs, but they rejected.
We'll come back to discuss a lot about ODM joining cabinet, but let's take a short break. We'll be right back after this.
You have to declare your position.
Hey there friends, welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Jerry Minor. And it's getting interesting now. The issues of parties. ODM is finally in government. And all the headlines today are talking about Azimio. I think the best headline is on the People Daily. They say Azimio dead. 2 words, simple. Daily Nation, Raila move fuels Azimio breakup. On Taifa Leo, Raila aruka mawaziri. A bit of confusion on what exactly is happening, but definitely things are not looking good for Azimio. Kenya party leader Martha Karua has already written to the coalition indicating that her party is seeking to exit the process. Your party is also a member of the Azimio,
yes.
Basil.
Actually,
what next for Azimio?
What I've seen with these, I would tell you, although I don't want to appear like I'm trying to applaud my party leader, but it is very clear Kalonzo has come out as the most principled leader we have in the country. Mm-hmm. He has stood with the Kenyans, because if you look at the chronology of events, what triggered protest, the issue to do with demonstration coming to the streets or demonstrators coming to the streets, they did not do that for ODM to get slots in government. I don't think that was the motive. And if it was, then we could link ODM to the protest and say they were the people who are fueling Gen Zs and inciting them to go to the streets. Because why would you see now the situation is coming down after they have joined government? Mm-hmm. It doesn't need a genius to tell you maybe they could be linked to this. And it is unfortunate to create anarchy for you to get to government. You know, what we should expect is people or leaders who are honest with themselves, who are not greedy for power. Now ODM has exhibited a very solid urge and greediness to power. That's why you have seen all of them running to government, meaning they were not sincere. If you listen to people like Ibandi, they used to criticize this government so very strongly, saying the government is not delivering, they're not doing this. Now he's in the government. If you listen to Opiyo Wandayi, you could think the guy wants to fight in parliament. He could even not allow us to speak. You know, if you are told, give 4 people to speak, he's even putting in his name there. Now he's a person who is in the front line, running to be part of the government. If you go to people like Oparanya, he used to criticize the Hustler Fund. Today is a person who is going to steer the success of that particular fund. And actually that is where the president would say he has used the political geniusness to be able to corner these people.
Do you feel he has just simply removed the burden from himself and given to ODM?
A very smart move he has done. Remember, he has now shifted the blame to the ODM. He will tell them, listen, I gave you treasury. You used to say the economy is not performing. Now you are in charge of that docket. So if it doesn't perform, you are the one to be blamed by Kenyans. If it is Hustler Fund, he has shifted it to Oparanya. So there is no way Oparanya will run away and they say, Hustler Fund is not functioning, is not, doing as expected by the Kenyans, because he's the one in charge. And all these other people, he has...
Fuel prices, fuel levy over now to Wandayi?
Now you see, because Wandayi was the one telling the government, please, Kenyans are suffering, they are suffocating, don't increase any levy, don't do this. Now he's in charge. And that's why we say, as politicians, people need to be honest.
Okay.
But you can't be saying this today, and tomorrow, if you are given a chance, you run. You become an opportunist. And that is why I'm saying, I don't mince my words. I want to say ODM is a serious betrayer to Kenyans. They have portrayed to the whole country that they are not genuine. Their people are there for their selfish interests.
Do you trust the statement by Raila Odinga, which he released yesterday, saying that he has not, although he endorses their nomination, that ODM has not entirely struck a deal?
Can we look, let me take you back when the IBC bill was ascended to. Raila was there, and the president categorically said, it is a time to come together and to form an inclusive, broad-based government. And you saw in that particular forum, when they were signing, some of the nominees from ODM were actually there.
Your party leader, Kalonzo, was also present.
Kalonzo was present, but he came as a member, a co-chair of the NADICO report writing ETC. So he wanted to witness some of the product of NADICO being ascended to. And then he disappeared, he left. But after he left, when now they were making pronouncements, talking to the fourth estate, members of fourth estate outside, you saw Raila was next to the president, and that aspect, that element of broad-based government the declaration was made that particular day. So that is to tell you, Raila from day one, he knew what is happening. And he can't run away and start telling us those who have gone, they have gone on individual capacity. Me, I'm speaking as a member of parliament, and I don't like to hide things. I'm an honest person, and I came to serve. That's why I'm among the few people who don't label themselves as politicians. So when Raila tells us those who have gone, and I heard Sifuna also making similar utterances, this is a script they are trying to write. You can't be in government partially and partially in opposition. If you move, you move. That is being honest to Kenyans. But you can't take Kenyans for a ride. You say you are in government, at the same time you're in opposition. You can't serve two masters at once.
Njeri Maina, for the past 2 years, you've been propagating the bottom-up economic agenda, which has been fiercely opposed by members of the minority side, led by Opiyo Wandayi, the minority leader. Now he is a nominee to cabinet. Now the person running, who's going to run, if approved by parliament to run the economy, will be John Mbadi, chairperson of ODM, which has been opposed to the better that you have been running. What happens to that? What happens to government? Does it mean that everything changes, the policy, the pronouncements going forward? You have basically people from the other side who are opposed to what you're doing now running the show.
I must say first that
Does it confuse you?
Opiyo Wandayi is a good friend of mine, and he has been very supportive even on the floor of parliament. And So I'm a bit conflicted because of course I do understand that factually speaking, you know, they were saying this and now they're in government, and I want to really welcome the nominees from the Azimio coalition to government. But so they also can't have their cake and eat it. We can't have people like Sifuna and Raila Odinga saying, you know, I had no idea about these nominees, they did it on their own. I mean, this is the minority leader that we're talking about. It is someone who holds a hierarchy in the Azimio coalition, or rather ODM, because my good brother Basil does not want to be associated with the entire coalition. What I can say is that at the end of the day, the key drivers of the agenda will be people working under the CSS. And I believe even a poll can become a soul. So I want to trust that once these CSS are vetted, and then they take their oath of office, that they will actually serve the bottom-up agenda and help the president implement the plan. And quote-unquote, politicians politic all the time. And I think that is where we don't get the gist of things. And like I've said, there's the politics of it. And most of the time we want to look at things from a very idealistic perspective. And that's why you find that we say that politicians have no shame. Today you'll say this, tomorrow you'll be, you know, very different, and you'll wake up and life goes on, because that's the politics of it. It's like the job description that you hold, right? There's a particular manner in which you do things. That is the way politics is run. Of course, there's a lot of and
bad manners.
There's a lot of you know, jitters here and there, and I can say for a fact that a lot of people have been told, you know, checkmate. Like I've said, Gen Zs have been told checkmate. Now Mount Kenya has also to rethink its politics, because we must also look ahead and think where the region will be in 2027 because of political realignment. And the coming in of Azimio also says that, well, the president has an option, and he has a right to have an option, because that is the politics of it. So Mount Kenya must also think along those lines, and other regions, so that we see how the puzzle will be fitting in 2027.
There's one headline, I think, on the Star. They say why Ruto Raila deal puts Riggy in a tight spot. And the deputy president had been very vocal, saying that ametega mitego State House to ensure that Raila Odinga doesn't get to the president. Now things have changed. What happens to the deputy president? And do you think his position as a possible running mate for the president come 2027 is under threat with the recent realignments?
I was looking at the Standard, I think page 4, and I saw some comments, or rather some opinion. And in politics, we never rule out anything, you know, because at the end of the day, I believe that, like I've said, politics is about interest. There are no permanent enemies, there are no permanent alliances. There's nothing that is cast in stone. And that is why I have insisted that Mount Kenya must rethink its politics and realignments, perhaps, and look at what could happen, all the possible scenarios for 2027, and see where the region fits and where the puzzle is going to, you know, fit well and move. And of course, when the DP asserted that Ameka Mitego and that Raila will not get in government, the president has also pronounced himself in Mount Kenya region, actually, that Raila will not get in government. There's no Nusumkate. I remember there's a time that there were headlines of a restless Mount Kenya, and the president had a tour of the region, I think for 4 days or 3 days, and that was the conversation at the time. So, like I have said, politics, you can say this today, tomorrow, depending on how the alignment of interest goes about, you say something different, and it is the politics of it. So I think perhaps maybe we take things in a very literal manner as Kenyans, forgetting that the politics of things is not to take things in a literal manner. So for me, the DP, yes, has to rethink his politics in 2027. He has to see where he fits and know that with the new political realignment, it's very likely that perhaps we could see changes in 2027, but also the president has to look at the facts on the table and where he got his numbers last time and where he will get his numbers in 2027, and whether they, it's like having a wife and then having like another new wife, right? So he has to see
having a second wife, yes.
Whether both of them will coexist, whether the new wife will replace the old wife, or whether maybe they will do a 50-50. So at the end of the day, the factual thing about it is that Mount Kenya has to rethink its politics.
Okay. It's all about politics, and some people are saying, Bonalote, that this had very little to do with the current crisis. It's more about 2027, and that the president is looking ahead. He's sitting pretty, but he feels 2027 there could be a problem.
Well, I will not say that, because one, for us to be able to reach the levels where we are, this was all ignited by the protests, the street protests by the Gen Zs. So I cannot really say that these things were planned before. It will not have reached this level if there were no street protests that we saw in this country. So we were driven to this level by the street protest and by the agitation by the members of the public that they wanted to see change this government. Two, I want to really look at what Basil has said, and this is all about politics. And to say that Azimio has actually moved into government. Azimio basically is ODM, and the other small coalitions, I know it will be take offense, but I want not to take offense. The others are small coalitions, and the reason why immediately Azimio moved to government, everything is collapsing, and the reason why we are told that Azimio is collapsing, Martha Karua has bolted out. Kalonzo Musyoka has not bolted out. Kalonzo Musyoka still recognizes Raila as the leader, and Kalonzo Musyoka is still being on the table. Whether Basil tells us or not, the two slots that remain probably under discussions for Kalonzo to get something. But if it delays, because again opportunity comes once, then somebody else might grab it. And I was telling Basil, if it comes your way, please don't waste time, because government is moving. The other thing that I want to say for Kenyans to hear is that Raila is a person that is a political enigma in this country. He has, and we cannot at any one point write off Raila on anything. If it wasn't because of Raila, if it wasn't because of him, probably we will not have had the Section 2A of the Constitution removed, because Raila realized at the point that we were being run by a dictator called Moi. And he actually, at that point, people thought Raila was mad. Raila went and sat with Moi when Tinga, at that time, and Jogo emerged. At that point, people thought Raila was mad. But immediately we were able to get the Section 2A of the Constitution, then we got the multipartyism. When Kenya was collapsing in 2007, again Raila went and worked with Kibaki. People thought Raila was mad, but Raila saved this country from brink of collapse in 2007. Even when the economic turmoil was affecting this country during Uhuru's time, Raila went and worked with Uhuru, because Raila realized that if this is left like this, probably the country was going to collapse. And even this time, I will say Raila have actually come in, not political as it may be. Raila has actually come to save this country from brinks of collapse. What my friend Kalonzo and the others are saying is that nobody should join Ruto. They did not want to see this government going on. Actually, they wanted this government to collapse. And Raila has come to save this country. He has saved everybody, including them. So for me, at this point, I will say, we might not get the best cabinet. In any case, all coalitions, we have never had a coalition that perfectly performed for Kenyans. All the time we've got coalitions, you know, there are a lot of interest, there are a lot of bosses inside there, there are a lot of allegiance inside there, and so the perfection of cabinet might not. And so Kenyans should not expect much now with this coalition government. But I think what the president did is to save this country from collapse. And that is the first thing. Self-preservation of the country was very important than anything, than economic development or anything. So once the country is self-preserved, once the country is able to move, then we can now start thinking, how are we going to move our economies fast? So I want to appreciate Raila for having recognized that this country was collapsing and that it needs to come in so that we can be at the table, discuss and ensure that we save this country from collapse. I will ask the other part of the Azimio to just join in, because now this is a government where everybody's in, nobody's out. And I'll tell you, Kalonzo might surprise you even today that he's still in government. The only person that I know will not surprise us is Martha Karua. That one has bolted out. But Kalonzo, just wait. You might be seen.
Basil, I'm sure you would want to respond to that. But even as you do, we have to look at Parliament and how it will perform going forward. This means that the two biggest parties in Parliament are working together. UDA with 145 MPs. Now ODM brings its 86 MPs. If at all they are in government wholly, then that will be the government's voting bloc. How does it change the conduct of the National Assembly going forward?
Well, I think for Kenyans, I would not say it's a good thing, because with the ODM joining government, it means opposition is weakened. That is a reality. We can't ignore that reality. Meaning whatever the government wants, it's likely that's going to sail through. And that may take us back towards what has ignited this protest. Remember the finance bill. Myself, I advised them, and that's why I voted no. And I did even in 2023, I also voted no. Why? Because I told them, if you increase taxes, even KRA itself will not meet its target. And I gave reasons to that. But it went through simply because the numbers, and people are there driven by their self-interest, are given something small, they vote in favor of the government. Now with ODM joining, it is very clear now the opposition is only left with few patriots like myself. Babu, I think, is also with us, also because I find him now leaving ODM, because it's about getting things right, not just being there to share positions and ensure the poor remains poorer. We don't want to continue defranchising our self-citizens. And if you look at, my brother Lotte is very happy saying Raila is coming to save the government. Raila is coming there for his personal interest. Don't be shocked. He's going to destabilize what used to be a united Kenya Kwanza. He did it during Moi. If you look at history, he came with a party. I think it was NDP, and then he merged with the KANU. And what happened 2002? He left with everyone. That was the beginning of the KANU death, the nosedive. KANU died automatically. When he joined Ruto, when he joined Uhuru, see what happened. The president himself was very unhappy. And that's why Raila and Ruto now, all the blame was shifted to them. And that is what gave the current president a win in the 2022 elections. Now what will happen now is going to create the same destabilization within Kenya Kwanza. And that is going to give the deputy president, because I really sympathize with what is going to happen now. Remember, this guy is coming and he has an agenda. Don't think he's coming to save your government. You'll be lying to yourself thinking Raila is joining to save you. He's not coming to save you. He's coming with an agenda. And that agenda will mean the deputy president very likely will join us. That, I may say it now, that is my foreshadowing. You'll be shocked. Because in principle, there is no way you'll mix beans and maize and be miscible. The way you cannot mix oil and water and you expect they completely dissolve. That miscible... You're
saying the continued stay of the deputy president in government
is going to destabilize, and very likely the deputy president might be cornered. He might be pushed. Because remember, they used to work very well with the president. Now with this ODM, I remember these are top leaders of ODM who have joined. These are not just members. Chairman of the party.
The two deputy party leaders.
Yes, they have left. So it is like Raila is there. In principle, he's the one sitting there. And they have a specific agenda. They're not just coming to save the government. Because how can you be...
3 years, do you see the deputy president surviving the next 3 years in government?
Even 2 years. 3 years is too long.
He won't get to 20%.
In the next 1 year and a half, you will come on the same podium now, the same stage, the same station, we'll discuss. You'll ask him that question 1 year and a half from now.
Prophet of
These are serious
I'm
assertions.
telling you, I told you I'm a realist, and you see someone who has that literature very well. You don't just look things at the superficial aspect. They say when the deal is too good, think twice. The deal here seems to be very good, but it's not as it is. You'll be shocked.
Final comments, Jerry.
Yes.
I find the assertions by my good friend quite interesting, but like I've said, nothing is ruled out in politics. Of course, we've been in those corners, we've had certain conversations,
And that is why I have said that Mount Kenya must rethink its politics. What I can tell the young people of this nation, and I have said it before, you can only engage government in two ways. Either you're in the system or you are running the system. I want to urge them to register and to turn out as voters in 2027, because at the end of the day, that is the only way they can be part and parcel of the governance solutions that we need to provide for this nation to move forward.
Okay. Thank you. Bonalote, final words?
Well, my final words is for those that have been nominated for the cabinet positions. Should they be taken in, I think it is important for them to look at Kenya as a country, not as sections, because now we might see them taking positions depending on who nominated them and the parties they're coming from, all the communities they're coming from, because not every community is sitting in the cabinet. The small communities, and we have 42 tribes in this country. Probably the ones we see sitting there probably are not more than 10. There are 30-something communities, my community included. Probably the community now where Basil come from, despite the fact that they've got numbers, is not sitting in there. I'll wish that they come and consider this is a country that is made up of everybody and that everybody pays taxes and that everybody requires to be served. That they serve this country in a manner that reflects Kenya as a country. What we've seen before in many of the governments from 1963 is that people serve their communities. If you go to the cabinet positions now, even the ones that have just been disqualified, you realize that the ministry, if the minister came from a particular region, you might realize that all employees, including the sweeper, the majority are coming from that area. What do we have for the communities that do not sit in cabinet? I speak for those communities, and I know those communities are suffering because of the way the governments have been running, not this one. The governments have been running. And so even as Gen Z is trying to bring in the new faces we are seeing now, the coalitions are coming in, new faces are coming into cabinet, I ask this cabinet to consider everybody so that we see the face of Kenya in every institution that they're going to serve. That is my final shot, because not all of us will sit. Otherwise, then we will have to amend the constitution so that every community, we have 42 cabinet secretaries, so that every cabinet secretary can then represent the community they're coming from.
Okay. And one of our viewers, Kipto Titus, says he's watching us from Kachiliba, North Pokot, Karun location, and says, say hi to my MP, Titus Lote.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, great.
I want to bring a new dimension. You know, the Gen Zs wanted a lean government. Now the president has only dealt with the cabinet secretaries. Of course, we expected them to be less than 22, not 22. Actually, in precise, if I was him, I'll go for the minimum as per the constitution, so that we cut off some of the budget that is going to paying salaries and perhaps which is not bringing any meaningful results to the country. Now the president has another chance. He needs to reduce the principal secretaries from 51 to about 22 to align with the CSERs. We need to go back to where our country used to be. One ministry, one PS. One ministry, one director. So that we reduce the wasteful spending that has been witnessed in the current government and previous governments. And that will make our country save so much to be able to engineer to development and also to be able to move forward without necessarily increasing taxes. The other thing that the president needs to do, in principle, when you look at the foreign travels, particularly of state officers, let's not focus on parliament. There are quite a number of people in ministries, directors, parastatal heads, who are always on the move, airborne. If you see also the way our counties are spending their money, something needs to be done. You can see a governor coming to open one project. He is coming with an endurance of about 40 cars. These are 4x4s, gazelers. So much is spent into these and the per diems and all this. So if we try to reduce this, we'll be able to save more and invest in development. Because there is no way a country can move forward if you don't pump your money where the money can generate desired results.
Okay.
Then the parastatals as well, we need to collapse them. We don't need to have 290 parastatals. We need to reduce the number, at least to maximum, if we have to, 100. Embassies. We don't need to have 47 embassies and 27 consulates. If you look at Britain itself, in East Africa it has 1. The British High Commissioner here, if you apply for visa in Tanzania, it's processed in Nairobi. If you apply for visa in Uganda, it's processed in Nairobi. I'm giving it an example. I lived in those countries. The time when I was in Tanzania, I wanted to go to the UK, my passport had to come to Nairobi. So in Kenya, you find we have embassies that do not give us any results. Countries which do not give us any value, and we still have an embassy there. And these are small economy. So if we cut on this, we'll have so much savings without necessarily increasing taxes. So that we make life ambitiable, life bearable for Kenyans, and put our country to the trajectory of economic development and progression.
Oh yes, thank you so much. But one question to you, Bwana Basil. Do you agree with this? And it's a yes or no answer.
Azimio did.
Azimio did.
No, because Azimio will rebrand itself.
Okay. Asante sana Robert Basil, MP Yata constituency, Titus Lote, MP Kachiliba, and Njeri Maina, woman representative, Kirinyaga County. Our panelists this morning on State of the Nation this Friday. It is a feel-good Friday, a lot more and some nice music coming up after the break. Do stand by for that. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. Good morning.